to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. Co-host is Justin Baker. On this trade deadline day, we come together to analyze all the trades. What else? What everyone else is doing, except for the thing is that we predicted everything that happened today.
Everything.
So now you're just coming back to hear why we thought what happened. We didn't predict it, but the thing that we did predict was the Columbus Blue Jackets giving up every draft pick until 2029.
They only have a 3rd and a 7th in this year.
It's amazing.
Don't even go out to Vancouver for the draft. Just stay home.
That would save them a lot of money. It's reminiscent of some of the teams in like the late 90s, early 2000s, like the Rangers and the Leafs, these teams that just had all the money. And so at every deadline, they would just trade away all their picks for a bunch of players just because, they knew they could grab some guys and bring them in. And of course, it ended up biting them in the butt later on because then they couldn't do that. They kept doing that despite the salary cap, and away we went. Well, the last time we talked, the last trade that was in the books was the Capitals acquiring Nick Jensen from the Red Wings. Of course, he has signed a 4-year extension. Good for Nick Jensen. 4-year, $10 million deal. And a name that we talked about as we tried to figure out what would happen on this deadline day, we figured that maybe Ben Lovejoy was on the move, and he did move. And that's where we're going to start with that trade, and then we're just going to go through the timeline, break it all down. Of course, some teams made multiple moves, and that'll play a part in our analysis. We're not just going to talk about one move by the Blue Jackets. We'll clump them all into to include that. But let's start with this Ben Lovejoy to the Dallas Stars for Connor Carrick, former Maple Leafs, just went there via waivers? Did he go there via waivers in the?
I think so.
Earlier, I think he did. Yeah, and a 3rd round pick. So Ben Lovejoy, just for some context, Ben Lovejoy got more assets than Derek Brassard did today. Connor Carrick in a 3rd round pick. What are your thoughts here? What does this do for the Dallas Stars?
A good bottom pairing guy that they could really use, especially because they're very top heavy on defense, and they've got an older guy, Roman Polak, back there that maybe could use a night or two off. So
maybe he could use the rest of the rest of his career. Like it should just kind of end today. That's it.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, all right. Yeah, Polak. You can find use for him in the playoffs, but to get the Stars into the playoffs, a guy like Ben Lovejoy will certainly help take minutes away, and maybe he'll probably play in their penalty kill. He's a decent penalty killer, but maybe he can shove up into that top 4 if you needed to adjust some of the pairings. And barring an injury, hey, Ben Lovejoy, he did win a Stanley Cup with Pittsburgh, if I'm not mistaken.
He did.
Isn't that right? He won with Pittsburgh, and then he left via free agency to the Devils. So that was the second of 3 Sidney Crosby Stanley Cups, right? That was the crazy run. Let's go. So Columbus Blue Jackets obviously did a lot on this deadline day. The thing they did right before on Saturday, they acquired Ryan Dzingel on a 7th round pick for Anthony Duclair, a 2020 2nd round pick, a 2021 2nd round pick to the Senators. So say goodbye to all the Blue Jackets hate the 2nd round.
Hate it.
They're good on the 2nd round. So they get Ryan Dzingel. They get Matt Duchene. On top of that, they also acquire Keith Kincaid, which I will give you credit. You said on our show, I'm going to go find it, and I'm going to play the clip. I'm very confident that you said Keith Kincaid could go for a 5th round pick.
I did. I'm
impressed. And that is what he went for, a 5th round pick. And a 5th round pick 4 years from now, 3 years or 3, I guess it would be 4 drafts from now. Not 4 years, but 4 drafts. 2022 5th round pick. So obviously Keith Kincaid going for hardly anything. And then they also acquire Adam McQuaid for Julius Bergman, who they actually got in that trade for Duchene. So they ship him out. And then also a 4th round pick in 2019 and a 7th round pick in 2019. So with all those moves, McQuaid, Kincaid, all right, so they kind of solved their backup position, and then which they dealt essentially their backup when they dealt Brandon Saad, sort of a part of that deal for Panarin. You've got Duchene, you've got Dzingel, McQuaid. my question is, what does this actually do to this team in terms of them winning a round?
Honestly, okay, let's look at the standings right now. I think right now they are sitting in the number 3 spot in the
They're
Metro.
hanging on. Carolina's right behind them.
I think they could honestly make a good push right now. You look, like we talked about, looking at the teams right behind them, Carolina. What other teams in the Metro there? Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, right. Both of them are 1 point behind Columbus. Columbus does have a game in hand, and actually they play Pittsburgh tomorrow, Tuesday. So that's a big game.
It is.
Whoever wins that game will be in the 3rd spot in the division.
Huge. We'll talk about Pittsburgh's moves a little bit later because I have a bone to pick with Jim Rutherford. But
what are you talking about? He just acquired the best defensive pairing ever.
I can't even. Columbus, okay. Columbus goes out and they basically say, we're all in for the season, right? All in because you're keeping Panarin, you're keeping Bobrovsky, you're not dealing those guys. You go out, get Duchesne, Dzingel, McQuaid. Adam McQuaid, who, honestly, the defensive market was not very good. There weren't a lot of good defensive guys to go out and get him. McQuaid was probably the best, if not one of the top defenders available. I like that move because, one, it's a great depth move. He's a guy that has a lot of size, can really handle a physical game. Not to say that they're going to get pushed around, but I think when you play a team like Washington that maybe does play a little bit more physical, he'll be a great asset to have. And plus, right now Ryan Murray, little hurt, little banged up. You don't know when he's going to be coming back, so I think that kind of fills that need for them to have a solid top 6 right now. But as far as Dzingel goes, first off, gotta give a shout out to Matt Duchesne. Picks him up in a private jet going back to get his family. It's like, hey, Dzingel, you want to lift? Let's take this private jet I chartered.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was fantastic. So you can look that video up too. It's amazing. But now you have basically the best, in my opinion, probably the best third line in all of hockey right now. They got Ryan Dzingel on the wing with Pierre-Luc Dubois and Oliver Bjorkstrand on the other wing. And it's pretty dangerous. I was kind of shocked that they moved Pierre-Luc Dubois all the way down from first center to third. I figured maybe he'd be a second-line guy.
Well, they're also, you got to think that they're just, is that really the line that's going to get the third most ice time?
Sure.
I don't know.
But either way.
Ryan Dzingel, great penalty killer. I think that they'll enjoy Ryan Dzingel.
Yeah. They're already talking extension with him already.
Yeah, which makes sense because they only have $30 million in cap space next year.
Yeah, with Panarin's coming off the book.
With Panarin, Duchesne, Dzingel, McQuaid, Kincaid, and Bobrovsky all coming off the books, along with Ryan Murray, Scott Harrington, just a guy named Zach Werenski. And, there's some of those guys are, obviously, Werenski's an RFA, not a UFA. But you've got to think Werenski's getting at least $6.5-7 million.
Yeah.
So they do have a lot of space, but can they?
I do think if Bobrovsky gets his act together in the playoffs, they legit in the Metro could probably go to the conference finals.
I mean, this team went all in to win a round,
and I think they can win more than one round.
I truly think that I don't know what that conversation looks like because at this point, when it comes to a Panarin and you're bringing a guy like Duchesne, you're sitting down with your owner and you're going, what do you want us to do? And that owner says, yeah, we have never won a freaking playoff round. We're the only team left. I mean, Minnesota came in at the same exact time and they won a playoff round. What year did they win? They went to the conference finals. They played the Anaheim Ducks.
I think 02 or 03.
Yeah. It was. It would have been 03.
Okay.
Right, because the Ducks. That was the year that Giguère took the Ducks
conference
to the finals, and the Devils won the Stanley Cup over them in 7 games. But yeah, the Wild were in the conference finals. So it took them 5 years to get in the conference finals, and it has taken the Columbus Blue Jackets. It's almost been. It's 20 years.
2 decades.
Year.
Yeah,
it's 20 years. So 20 years. Maybe the 20th try will work out. I mean, hopefully they make the playoffs.
Hopefully.
I think this should put them over the hump in terms of making the playoffs, which is rough news for a Pittsburgh Penguins team that's really struggling right now, and for for Carolina, who probably hoped that they could maybe push their way up into there.
They're on fire,
so they don't have to play the Islanders or the Tampa Bay Lightning. That would be ideal, but yeah, this team, I think they just secured their playoff spot. if they don't win a round, this is an absolute utter failure.
The GM's gone at this point if they don't win a round.
You think so though? Because they I mean,
maybe he gets one more season, but
he kind of I don't think he had. I think this is like, hey, what do you want to do? Should we go all in, try to get these guys? Are you okay with giving up some future for this? And the owner goes, yeah. Then it's not the GM's fault.
Well, I don't think the owner specifically targets people. I think owners, you go to the owner and you say, hey, do you want to dish the picks and go all in and get some really good assets?
Sure. But I mean, who else would you have? There was no way that they had what it took. Okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're gonna talk other trades, but I don't think they would have had what it took to get Mark Stone.
Okay, well,
because of what Mark Stone
at
fetched.
the time, sure.
Because what he ended up getting, I don't think Columbus could have offered.
Okay.
So let's continue on. We'll roll through these.
Let's go back to Dallas.
Yes, back to the Dallas Stars, who get Matt Zuccarello, who recently passed away after blocking a shot.
Scores a goal, then he's gone.
Scores a goal, and that was, he actually scored a goal, and I wasn't watching the game, but I get a little notification that it's like, Zuccarello scores in his first game. Next notification, Zuccarello dies. After scoring goal, explodes into a million pieces, blocking a shot. Just taking that New York Rangers softness and so Zuccarello traded for a conditional second round pick and a conditional third round pick. Those conditions based off whether he resigns and whether they win rounds, and
they go to the Stanley Cup Finals. Yeah,
which
they could turn into 2 firsts.
They're not going to, but
no.
Matt Zuccarello, 2 second. So basically, we'll just say right now it's a second and a third round pick, which is. I think is a great deal for the Stars, especially considering the Stars needed this trade. I mean, if there was a team that needed a center, it was Columbus. Next, it was Dallas for these playoff teams. They needed to make a move here.
Well, Zuccarello's not a center, but they needed an infusion. He's a winger, but they needed an infusion of scoring.
Why am I thinking that he can play center?
I don't know. Maybe you're thinking of Kevin Hayes.
Can he play center?
I mean, I guess he could.
I'm gonna ask him.
But
I'll be right back.
Yeah, Zucker. Did you watch Henrik Lundqvist video?
I swear he used to play center.
Yeah, they showed this video of I think it was, I can't remember the name of the network that does all of the Rangers sports stuff, but anyways, they were interviewing Lundqvist and like, how do you feel? Zook's gone or whatever, and he was in tears and he couldn't talk. He's like, I can't talk. Just in it, I was like getting choked. I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy, I can't even. The king.
Let yourself be traded, brother. It's time to say goodbye.
He said no. Apparently,
yeah, he did. Yeah,
man, I can't remember what team it was in on him, but apparently there were a couple teams to kick on the tires, and he just flat out said, "Nope, I'm not going anywhere."
Stupid.
I mean, whatever.
Stupid.
Yes. I get it. You want to be a lifelonger, but
they, yeah. I mean, I guess you could say, hey, they've just stacked up, but who cares? In 2 years, you really think that he's going to be the guy who's going to be able to take you?
They're not going to have enough talent in 2 years to.
No, and you're not going to be good enough in 2 years. You're barely good enough now.
Well, either way, still, but
it's sad. It's sad because I think that he really could. I don't think his legacy would still be with the Rangers. Everyone would remember him with the Rangers, but he could go somewhere and win.
He could. If maybe that last year they'll dish him somewhere.
Yeah. Well, the last year is a little different. I think if he were a UFA right now, maybe he'd go, but he's got so much term left.
That's possible. That and Rangers don't exactly have anybody to take over for him yet either. Back to Zuccarello, the injury, 4 weeks. They say he could be out. So
yeah, he'll be okay. We'll raise him from the dead. We're gonna skip these useless ones. I just do want to talk about the Leafs getting Nicholas Baptiste for future considerations. I was, you see this from time to time, future considerations, and I went on a little research. I'm gonna go and try to figure out what this actually means and what it, how do we determine what that means? There's nothing. There's just forums of people speculating. I can't find any actual information other than the fact that it can mean money.
Okay.
Is that usually it means some amount of money is being given. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes truly what future considerations means is, hey, we don't really have a use for this guy. You want him? Okay. Yeah, we'll consider something in the future.
We'll hook you up on a trade.
Yeah, we'll
okay.
Maybe we'll throw in an extra 7th later on. And that's really what it is. It's a 1-for-0 trade.
It's an IOU.
Yeah. But that may never get repaid, or it might be like, hey, we'll throw in $300,000 with this next deal. It's weird. So the San Jose Sharks, one of the first moves of the day, acquire Gus Nyquist from your Detroit Red Wings for a 2019 second-round pick and a 2020 third-round pick that is conditional on him re-signing.
No, actually, I think it's
the how far they go.
Yeah, winning the Stanley Cup, I think it is.
Okay, and it becomes another second if they win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, and speaking of which, I did a little reading. It's funny when you see all these like 2022 draft picks pop up, right? You're like, how far can they go? I saw on Twitter somebody actually researched it, and there's no language that says you can only go so far. You can go as far as you want into the future.
I'll tell you what. I'll give you my 2079 first-round pick.
Deal. I won't be GM. Yeah, San Jose.
I will be dead.
Great move for San Jose. I like this. Apparently, Gus Nyquist told Kenny Holland only one team he wouldn't go to, although he did ask if he could go to San Jose. That was his favorite choice because he is best buddies, I guess, with Erik Karlsson, those Swedes.
Oh, okay.
So,
I mean, I love the fit for San Jose. I think that it gives San Jose a lot of options. And Nyquist, to me, is a guy who has played in such a good... I mean, he's played for Babcock, and so he's played in some good system teams. And he's also played with really good players. He knows what it's like to play with Hall of Fame players. So to me, he'll slide right in. And he hasn't really had a good season this year.
I disagree.
14 goals or something like that?
Yeah, but he's still putting up points. I mean...
Yeah, but on a garbage team too.
Sure.
A lot of his points are kind of those. He's scored when it hasn't really mattered very much. And,
okay.
I think that he may have a resurgence where the last time the Red Wings were real good. Let's say not real good, but they were a playoff team. Was what 2015, 16?
Even further back than that, maybe 13, 14. But
when's the last time the Wings made the playoffs?
2015, I think.
15. Okay, that's what I said.
Somebody fact check that.
2015. I mean, and he was a good player for them when he was in a position to win,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that he should be a good fit for the Sharks and fit nicely in their top 9. They really can move him all over.
Play on that third line with Joe Thornton, that'd be a great combo.
He can play on the right. He can play on the left. It doesn't matter.
Yep. The only thing I don't like about him,
can he play a little center too?
He can if you need him to.
Center? I think in fantasy he's one of those triplets.
He is. Although I will say the only knock on Gus is the fact that he never really likes to go up the middle, right, to try to score. He's not that hard-nosed player to go up the middle, so you're going to get a lot of perimeter stuff from him. But again, he's still he's a great top 9 ad for anybody, and a second, third round pick is still a good deal for that.
All right, you're Keith Kincaid. How do you feel about him going to the Columbus Blue Jackets?
This is interesting because I think they grabbed him for depth. I don't know if maybe there's something they know, like, oh, hey, we don't have a lot of faith in our backup, or Bobrovsky, maybe not. Maybe they're hoping that if everything goes to shit, that Kincaid can step in the playoffs. But
sure.
I have no idea.
Well, I think it's more, well, if Bobrovsky's not going to sign, maybe we can bring him in and
he can play backup. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, or it's just, hey, we don't really like our backup, and at least he's proven that he can play. I mean, he's not good, but he can. He's a formidable backup, and that's exactly what he is. Okay, let's go. One of the bigger moves of the day: the Winnipeg Jets get Kevin Hayes from the New York Rangers for Brendan Lemieux. Is that Claude Lemieux's son? That's what he is, right? Yeah, I think so. Right?
Nephew.
Yeah. There you go. Related to the guy. 2019 first round pick and a conditional 4th in 2022. Your thoughts on? Let's go this way. Everybody is first focusing on Kevin Hayes, but Brendan Lemieux to the Rangers. I really like this pickup for them. After getting rid of Dzingel, after getting rid of here now, Zuccarello, Kevin Hayes. I mean, this Rangers team is depleted. I do like that they got a player back who I think people thought that he was going to be better, and he never really got a pure shot in Winnipeg because of the players ahead of him. And I think in New York, this rest of the season, maybe he's a guy who, we look back and we go, wow, they stole a player from the Jets because they weren't willing to play. I'm pretty sure he's a first round pick somewhere in the.
He was, I think, 20s, 26.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's one of those guys that, he's got the talent, but he's just been hindered by the guys in front of him, like you said. I completely agree. Now, this was a trade that I think Winnipeg needed more than a Mark Stone, for example. Just because I think
because of the
center position. Yeah,
you don't like. We've said it. Brian Little on that second line just doesn't feel right.
Well, not him at center. That second line doesn't feel right. I like Brian Little. You can put him on the wing if you want now, or you can move him down the third line center. But now you have options. You're not stuck with Brian Little at center on that second line because let's face it. I mean, Adam Lowry or anybody else below them really can't play those second line minutes. So now you have a guy that you have an option to keep on that second line, or you can move him down third line if it doesn't really work out.
My guess is that Little goes when he plays third line center, and then you're able to slot guys properly. With them getting rid of Lemieux, it opens up a little bit of spot on the fourth line, which we know that one of the last moves of trade deadline day is they acquire Par Lindholm from the Leafs, who can't score for the life of them, but the Jets need a center for that fourth line. So there you go. Okay, well, let's go. Montreal Canadiens get Jordan Wheel for Michael Chaput. Just kind of one of those, hey, you need a change. We need a change. Here you go. Not too much to focus on there. I do want to talk about this deal because the Panthers acquire Cliff Poo. I just
love his
never
name.
heard of the guy before, but I appreciate what his name is. I like it from my 5-year-old standpoint. It's great. So I guess there's your considerations of the future. Is the Carolina Hurricanes acquire Thomas Yurko from the Panthers for future considerations, and then the Panthers acquire him from the Cliff Poo from the Hurricanes for future considerations. So I guess that was the deal, right? Like I guess they were like, yeah, here, take this guy, figure out who you want from this list, get back to us, and they got back to them a couple hours later. I don't know how that works. This was an interesting one, one that was kind of I don't know, glossed over, but may make a difference when all is said and done, as the Flames acquire Oscar Fentenberg from the Kings for a conditional 4th round pick. For a team that has a pretty good defense, but doesn't really have beyond their 5 guys, that sixth defenseman has kind of found his way in and out of the lineup, and they didn't have a whole lot beyond their 6 guys. So providing some depth, we know it can come in handy come playoff time, because a defenseman will go down at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, well, we already talked to Adam McQuaid, so we'll jump through that. Marcus Johansson goes from the Devils to the Bruins for a 2nd round and a 4th round pick. Your thoughts on Marcus Johansson and the Bruins?
Well, it cost the Devils a 2nd and 3rd to get him from Washington, so they pretty much recoup. I mean, a pretty good chunk of what they gave up to get him.
I mean, he barely played for them.
He injured so much, and then he's still useful though. I think Boston, honestly, this was like Plan C minus. Honestly,
yeah.
They were shooting for Mark Stone, they were shooting for Kevin Hayes. They couldn't get these guys, and so they're like, crap, we need somebody to play in our top 9. So, hey, Jersey, you're calling? What? Who do you have? Oh, well, okay, Johansson, you've shown some talent in the past. As long as you can stay healthy, I mean, you could probably fill out that top 9 pretty good. Now, whether he plays in the 2nd or 3rd line role, yet to be seen. But hey, I don't mind the move. I think maybe I would have made that 2nd conditional to be like, hey, if you make it to the 3rd round, then yeah, we'll give you a 2nd. If not, it's a 3rd. But that's just me.
Okay. Matt Hendricks from the Wild to the Jets. That's another one that might fly under the radar. But Matt Hendricks was on Winnipeg a year ago, and he's a guy who seems like everyone likes him. Everyone that plays with him likes him. He comes in and maybe can provide a little bit of that playoff leadership that I don't know. I don't know if it's missing from Winnipeg, but it just seems like something's off with Winnipeg. I mean, they've got a ton of talent, and occasionally in games they just kind of get pushed around, and they just don't seem to have the same level of it's that stupid intangible where you're like, they don't have a lot of heart or something.
Right.
And Blake Wheeler's a heart guy. And, but the way Laine's kind of played, you kind of have some question marks about him. And it feels like something did need to happen with this team. I mean, you look at Hendricks and you bring in Kevin Hayes. Both those guys, I think, are going to drive that heart up a little bit.
Yeah, and there's no shortage of veteran leadership that you want on your team come playoff time anyway. So a guy like this, again, veteran leadership is key. I think, again, there's a lot of younger guys on this team that maybe, are just relatively new besides Winnipeg's, last couple of years. They really just haven't had a lot of experience, and Hendricks is, he's been around, so it'll be good.
There you go. Okay, Colorado Avalanche get Derek Brassard for a 6th-round pick and a 3rd-round pick. And just for some context, Derek Brassard just 1 year ago was traded for a 1st-round pick, a 3rd-round pick, Ian Cole, and Philip Gustafson. And don't forget that, yes, the Penguins also acquired Vince Dunn and a 3rd-round pick in that deal. But, I mean, we're talking it's 1 year later, and he barely gets a 3rd-round pick.
Yeah, mind you, too, if he re-signs in Colorado, Florida gets their 6th-rounder back. So they can take it back. And
Yeah. It's just a long fall for the guy. Although, one of the things we talked about was he wouldn't want to be in a place where he's not the second-line center. I think he found a place where he will be the second-line center.
Yeah, and they definitely needed somebody outside those big 3 names to drive a little bit of offense. I mean, yeah, they have some guys that are, decent. Tyson Yost, Carl Soderberg's been okay, but these aren't guys that are meant to drive a second line, right? They're not guys that are ready for that kind of responsibility, both defensively and offensively. And so I think when you get a guy like Brassard now in your second line, it gives you options, right? You can keep the big 3 together and not have to worry about that second line finding offense, or you can split some guys up and help generate some more offense on 2 lines now.
Yeah, the nice thing is that the Panthers actually play the Avalanche tonight.
There you go.
So they're already in Colorado, so Brassard will just wear a different jersey.
Just like Duchesne.
Yep. And so to me, when I look at Colorado, I think that they're a team that is getting a little unlucky. They are, out of all the teams, the 2 wildcard teams in the West and everyone else outside the playoff picture, they are the only team with a positive goal differential. Every other team, Dallas is a -5. Every other team is double digits minus. And they're 15 goals differential more than the next team and 23 for the next. I mean, it's just wow. They are a better team than I think what they've shown. And it's maybe been their defensive side, and that's because they haven't had the forwards have been playing too high up in their lineup. Brassard comes in, and I think he shuffles guys down to their proper spots. And so I really do think that Brassard's presence will play a role in Colorado making the playoffs. I think that this is the exact move they needed to make. It was a very patient and well thought out move. I mean, they didn't have to pay anything for him, and he could help them make the playoffs, which would be a good step forward for this team. I think that they'll finally jump Minnesota here soon, if not tonight.
Okay.
After they beat the Florida Panthers. Next trade on the docket is the Penguins acquire. We're going to skip that. Yes, the Penguins acquiring Eric Goodbranson from the Vancouver Canucks for Tanner Pearson. Tanner Pearson goes to his 3rd team of the year. And so that Hagelin-Pearson trade, neither of them are on the teams that they got traded to. And Eric Goodbranson will join Jack Johnson for the greatest defensive pairing of all time.
Oh, boy, that's going to be rough.
Goodbranson is I suppose you'll have to call him a project because, well, maybe 3 years ago he was considered a decent defenseman. He really has proven to be a turnover machine in Vancouver. And maybe just too slow and too much of the, if we were in 1990 or 1999, he'd be a great defense partner for Darian Hatcher. But now he's just too slow and just can't move the puck. Doesn't have those skills. And so, does he really move the needle at all for Pittsburgh?
barely. I mean, if you maybe look at their bottom pairing, you could say, okay, great, this maybe improves it a little bit, but they went out and got Chris Weidman too. I mean, it's not getting any better on defense for him, so yeah, good luck.
Yeah, I mean, there are two different strategies, quality and quantity. And the Penguins went for the quantity, not the quality.
Right.
Because there's very little quality on that blue line. And Jim Rutherford seems to have gone from a genius to a moron in a matter of 2 years. So it's funny how just a few moves will make you you look like... He looks like 2009 Jim Rutherford, signing Cam Ward to a 78-year deal so that he could join the likes of Rick DiPietro and... it's just rough. He seems to get his team into a position, and then I don't know. It's fine to go. Like, to me, I think what he's trying to do with Jack Johnson is what they did with Ron Hainsey. They brought in Ron Hainsey, and I would say they turned around his career, and then they go and bring in Jack Johnson. It just hasn't been the same level of production. The difference is they signed Jack Johnson to a long deal for a lot of money, whereas Ron Hainsey was that project kind of deal. I think he was paid $3 million, and they acquired him for cheap. But anyways, let's go to one of the bigger moves of the day, and that is the Nashville Predators trading Kevin Fiala and acquiring Michael Granlund from the Minnesota Wild.
Just an even 1-for-1.
Gotta love a good old-fashioned hockey trade. So... for the Minnesota Wild, getting Kevin Fiala, I mean, we all, Paul Fenton is on his road to recreating the 2016 Nashville Predators, and if you don't know, he was the former assistant GM in Nashville, bringing over a few guys from Nashville now. Does Kevin Fiala turn the corner? Does he get back to that guy that we thought could be a 50, 60 point guy, scoring 30 goals? Or was that just an aberration, and he's going to go to Minnesota, and it's going to be just more of the same?
Oh, boy, that's really tough to tell. Because, I mean, it depends what kind of pieces they end up putting around him, right? Because Granlund, I mean, man, there's your top dog, your top center, right? So he's gone. Now you bring in a guy who's played his career on the wing. And you don't have really anybody outside of Eric Stahl to center him and an injured Koivu. So, maybe if they find a decent center to put with him, put some younger pieces in there, maybe. But I honestly don't see him ever being more than a 40-point player at this point. Yeah,
the Wild really looked at their team and went, yeah, we're in a playoff spot right now, but we don't think it's going to last. So they just went and they sold a lot of pieces when they got rid of Charlie Coyle, of course, and... I mean, for Nashville, I love the move because now I think sometimes, when you're talking quality over quantity, Kyle Turris and Ryan Johansson are not the quality 1-2 center in the league. They're fine. They are number one and number two centers, but they're towards the bottom. We've talked about this. But Nick Bonino as your third line center, not very good. Like, the depth quickly falls apart. And so bringing in Granlund, he's signed for another year after this one. That really gives them the option. Now Turris could play the third line if they need him to. Granlund can move up and down this lineup, and he can also play the wing if they want to move him. If they're playing him on the power play, they can play him on the wing. And so I think that it really does give this team some options and sets them up for that nice date with the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah,
where it's looking like it's all going.
It really does. And the best part about this for Nashville, too, is they get a guy who doesn't have, granted, they got some term on Granlund, but it's only 1 year because it's key with, what's-his-face, Roman Josi, becoming a UFA at that point. So now they're going to have to shell out dollars for him. They want to keep him, and at least his $5 million for Granlund comes off the books at that point, right. And they have options now.
Absolutely. Okay, let's go to the deal of the day. Well, the deal everyone was waiting for, and it happened at 2:45 p.m., and that was the Vegas Golden Knights winning the lottery. They acquire Mark Stone from the Ottawa Senators and Tobias Lindbergh for the main piece of the deal. Eric Brandstrom, defenseman, taken in the first round by the Vegas Knights, and he is as I'll say this that oh crap, what's his name? Shoot, guy on TSN. Their head scout guy on TSN, Craig Button.
Craig Button, yes.
He says he's top 10 players playing outside the NHL, and in the top 10 of prospects that have already been drafted. So, I personally I've seen Brandstrom a little bit in the World Juniors. I haven't watched him in the AHL because I don't watch AHL hockey very often, but. From what scouts are saying about Brandstrom, it's that he is an A+ prospect.
Wow.
And that he could be a guy who comes in and he's a puck moving defenseman, offensive defenseman, and of course everyone makes comparisons offensive defenseman to Erik Karlsson, and that name's been dropped. And so a nice addition. And then of course they also get a second round pick in 2020 and Oscar Lindberg. So, really, two Lindberghs. Lindbergh for Lindbergh. And then you've got Stone for Brandstrom and a second-round pick. So, what is your thoughts on what Ottawa was able to acquire for Mark Stone?
Whew.
Because what I saw was some other GM said, we couldn't have come close to offering what Ottawa offered, or what Vegas offered for Mark Stone.
Yeah,
because of the talent. I mean, Brandstrom, I guess if you were, it's hard for some teams to consider what he's worth because a lot of teams don't have a Brandstrom just sitting in their system. Like a player like that for a lot of teams just comes up and plays right away. To me, Erik Brandstrom, it'd be like the Vancouver Canucks giving up Elias Pettersson last year. Like that's how good this guy is in a lot of scouts' minds. Is that, hey, he's the guy who next year you bring him up and he's going to be a Rookie of the Year candidate.
I kind of think you're pretty close to nailing it on the head there. He is a guy who could be that type of player. Now, a lot of people outside of the hockey world are going to have, I guess, that don't have a lot of knowledge of, prospects and stuff like that. They're going to have to throw a fit because on paper, this looks like, right, Vegas got a steal of a deal here.
Right, because there's not a first-round pick in there.
Exactly, and there's no big-name player. But when you look at the prospect that Ottawa gets back in it, you can say, okay, for a guy that probably was going to walk, in my opinion, and, well, you seem to have disagreed.
They offered him 8 years, $10.5 million.
Yeah.
And he said no.
Well, apparently they're working on a deal for 8 and 9.5 right now in Vegas.
It's done deal.
It is. Okay,
it's
good.
A done deal.
Yeah, and in a no-tax state, that's like $12 million a year.
Right.
Which means Panarin now is going to get paid through the roof. Anyways, or we'll see. But, yeah, now you have Shabbat and Brandstrom, two cornerstone defenseman guys that you can lead your team for the next 10 to maybe even 15 years.
Yeah.
That is huge. That is freaking huge.
I think the issue is for Sens fans, they go, well, this guy didn't want to stay. Supposedly the reason that he is leaving isn't he could have gotten a deal worth more money. The reason he's leaving is because he didn't think that the owner would pay for the other guys. And so he doesn't want to be a part of an organization where, okay, yeah, they pay him to stay, but maybe they're not going to pay Shabbat to stay. Maybe they're not going to pay these other guys to stay. And so I think that this is deeper. This is, the league needs to figure out how to, this team is the Miami Marlins, like the Florida Marlins. Remember when the Florida Marlins, it was like every year.
Yeah.
It was who was the guy in the Tigers? Why can't I think of his name? Their home run hitter.
Cabrera.
Oh, okay. That they got for what seemed like nothing.
Right.
From the Marlins. And the Marlins kept chugging. They'd have these great players who came up, they're 23 years old, ready to take off, and they traded them because they didn't want to pay them all this money.
Right.
And the Senators have become the professional league, minor league team. Like, this is the farm system for the rest of the league. You know, every league has them. Every league has those teams where you look at them and you go, they're never going to win. They might occasionally be good, but as soon as they're good, their players are going to piece because they're not going to pay the money. So they are the rest of the league's farm team.
Well, I mean, maybe this is where you have to reevaluate like what we keep the salary cap floor at, right? Because next year, I think Ottawa's got $44 million committed to 16 players, I believe it is. And the salary cap, I think, even if it goes up a little bit, it's going to be around $60 million or something like that for the floor. So now they have to go out and spend, right? You have to go out and spend some money on players. I mean, granted, you're not going to go out there and get, a Panarin or, try to re-sign, a Matt Duchene or something like that. But they'll probably go add a few guys for $5 million a piece or something like that can play on a second line, and then they'll be okay.
Overpay for some guys.
Yeah, a couple of years, but
$35 million in cap space.
It's huge
for next year.
And so I understand where Stone's coming from, because you look at the cap space they do have, and you're like, man, why don't they? I would be worried that they're not going to go out and try to acquire a Panarin to try to make this team a contender at some point.
Plus the fact that you've got Bobby Ryan, who is your highest paid player, which they obviously he is a third line player at best
and untradeable.
And untradeable. Should just buy out his contract would probably be the better thing to do, especially for a team that has no money. After that, your highest paid player is Cody Ceci at $4.3 million. Oh, sorry, Craig Anderson, 4.7. Okay. Nobody's paid more than $5 million after him. And you got to look at this and go, I mean, you're a penny pinching team. And so, we aren't going to win here. Like I said, every now and then a team like that is able to really, everything comes together for one season and they're able to do it. Like they made their run and they were one goal away from going to the Stanley Cup Finals, but it all fell apart the next year because they just can't sustain it.
Yep.
So, okay, well, let's stop
move on
Senators fans to death, because it's just I feel for you.
Yep.
But Mark Stone, we didn't really even talk about what he does for the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, he really just, I think he changes that entire organization top to bottom. They bring in their best. He is their best player now. They just I mean, every single player in that lineup shuffles down one notch.
You can
because
put
of where Mark
Riley Smith, who was one of your best players last year, now on your third line if you want to.
Exactly. Well, yeah, Riley Smith shouldn't play with Carlson and Marchessault. Marchessault's having a down year.
Sure.
Man, can maybe Mark Stone walk in there and change.
And now Carlson comes in and
my goodness,
has a great winger now. Whew.
Honestly, you know what I think happens long term?
Please.
Erik Karlsson's going to go and sign with the Vegas Golden Knights.
You think so?
I think he's gonna reunite himself with Mark Stone, and they are going to be a team to deal with for the next 5-6 years.
Okay.
Just a future prediction.
Find a backup first.
We already kind of talked Par Lindholm to the Jets from the Leafs for Nick Patan. Kind of just one of those depth moves. Michael Del Zotto from the Ducks to the Blues. I do like the fact that the Blues did do something to try and get faster. Del Zotto can at least skate. He can move the puck a little bit. He's not a great defenseman, but he can play on your second power play unit and kind of I think he can move the needle a little bit for them.
Yeah.
If put into the right scenario,
They've got guys who can play defense back there. Peter Angelo, Parenko, Vince Dunn. Those guys know how to play defense, and they're still good puck movers too. So now you get another good puck mover who maybe now can replace a guy like, Jay Bouwmeester, for example, right? A guy who's maybe, on his way down, his way out. Now you can put him on the third pairing, and you don't have to give him top line minutes or top 4 minutes anymore. You don't have to worry about that, because Del Zotto can go in there and he could probably play as your number 4, number 5 defenseman and be serviceable, right? And give you some depth anyways at that position, so you can shuffle things around to fit, whatever team it is maybe you're playing, right? So say you're playing a team that is predicated on speed, not size, right? You can play Del Zotto a little bit more. You play a team with more size. Now you can maybe put him a little further down the lineup.
Perfect. Hard to believe that Del Zotto's only 28 years old. I feel like he's traded every single year.
He really
he's either
is.
Traded or signed somewhere new every year. Last big trade of the day. Last one coming in. The Nashville Predators finally, they go and they get Michael Granlund for Kevin Fiala, and then they essentially replace Fiala with Wayne Simmons for Ryan Hartman and a 2020 fourth round pick. So, I guess they should replace Ryan Hartman with Wayne Simmons. But I think this move, what does this really do for the Predators in terms of I don't know, changing the makeup of this team a little bit.
Gives them a legit third line, right? They've been running on Nick Bonino and Brian Boyle, guys who are serviceable in third line, minutes and roles, but they're not like a scary threat, right? Like we talked about, Pittsburgh during their cup runs, they had Phil Kessel running on the third line, which was a legit threat, right? He could go out and score any night he wanted to. Now you have guys, because you can move Kyle Turris down now with the addition there, down to your third line if you feel like it with Granlund, slot him into that second line role. You put a guy like Wayne Simmons alongside of him, a guy who can not only kill penalties, but plays the physical type of game.
And plays the power play.
Yes, he plays the front of the net.
And
so well.
This is the worst power play in the NHL. It's hard to believe.
Go. Yeah.
Worst power play in the NHL. And yeah, it's a move that I think could let them really, they just acquire Granlund. You could just assume take Granlund and put him on a line with Simmons. And then, on their wing, you take a guy like a Yarncroke or, even maybe Brian Boyle. Throw him on that third line. Just create a line of guys that you just traded for. There's all sorts of options that they have. But it seems to me like this team they had their really great run to the Stanley Cup Finals 2 years ago. Right? Yeah, two years ago. And they got by on the fact that they have a great defense. Other teams have gotten so much better at the forward position, and because the game has gotten so much faster, I feel as though the way that they're built just isn't good enough anymore. They're always going to be in the mix because they do have the depth throughout their lineup. They have the quantity. I just don't know if they have the quality to get them past a team like Winnipeg. Do they have the quality to get them past a team like St. Louis? Sure. Absolutely. But once you run up against a Winnipeg, once you run up against Vegas or San Jose or even Calgary, who I think has a better forward group at the top end where they can outplay these guys, I think you're going to run into problems.
Sure, yeah, and let's face it, it never hurts to get a quality leader like Wayne Simmons in the locker room either, because he's one of those guys where he's so beloved in Philadelphia, the locker room, everybody loves him, and he'll be a good voice for that team. On top of the power play and the top 9 minutes he can provide offensively.
Yeah.
So
yeah, agreed. Well, any last thoughts on 2019's trade deadline day?
Gotta say, I'm disappointed in two teams.
Okay.
The Islanders and Flames. That they made really no big splashes. Because I think, granted, you're not at the point where you want to go all in, but I think the Islanders are more so at a point where they have a lot of pending unrestricted free agents where this team could dismantle pretty quickly. I don't think it'll be disastrous for them, but they could be one of those teams that next year maybe is sitting on the bubble because they lose a lot of key pieces, guys who have gotten better, especially like, we talk about their captain. Yeah, guys who could bolt for other franchises. So why not make a big move now? Why you have those key pieces? Bring in like a Wayne Simmons or make a push for a guy like Stone. You could have gave up a Wallstrom or something. Maybe, I don't know, but again.
Yeah, well, I think they were in on Stone. I think they tried.
Yeah, probably.
I just don't think anybody had a Brandstrom. Nobody was willing to give up their best prospect in their organization for that. So
yeah, but still disappointed that they didn't make any moves at all, any big moves to.
Yeah, at Calgary, I kind of was thinking that they might try and get a goaltender, and Mike Smith has come back and he's been a little better these last few games, and so I think that made them feel comfortable with where they were at. And you also have to think this team is kind of in this position where you got to look at yourself and go, okay, are we a winner this year? Like, can we get out of our own division? You've got to think that they could. But also it's going to be tough. They are either going to have to play Vegas, San Jose, or both.
Yeah, I think Vegas right now is the team that would scare me more than San Jose.
If San Jose come playoff time once,
if Martin Jones can get it together,
yes.
Of course. But I think it's a toss up with either three of these teams. Could be dangerous, but to me, I think I would be a little bit more worried if I'm Calgary, though, just because you don't have the experience come playoff time that maybe some of these other teams have had over the last couple of years.
Especially since Kincaid went for a 5th-round pick.
Yeah.
Could you be kicking yourself that you weren't willing to give up a 4th?
You could have probably got Brian Elliott for a 4th rounder, a guy who granted he left Calgary on bad terms, but
Yeah, but San Jose could have. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that is our show. Let us know what you thought. If you were disappointed in what your team did at the deadline, let us know at OT Hockey Talk. We will now. We can put trades aside.
Trades aside.
We're not going to talk about trades for at least 3 days.
Okay. 3 days.
Because we've it's still fun to talk about. But yeah, we're gonna hone in here on how we think the rest of the season is going to go. I think that we're kind of at that 3-quarter mark where we can start to make some real assessments, and we'll take a look at how these teams now look with their new pieces, and we'll talk about what it's going to be a little bit weird seeing Wayne Simmons in a different jersey and Mark Stone in a Vegas jersey. I think he's actually the one I can picture. I can picture him being in a Vegas jersey.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
but it'll be fun. We will talk to you very soon. We'll be back later in the week.